Hello and welcome to Game Theory. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon joins me and we are going through the second half of our two-part episode this week, breaking down expectations for each NBA team and how they can exceed them this season. We're going to talk about the Western Conference teams in this episode. Bryce and I are super excited to get into that. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way down pass. Bang! What's this going to be? Oh! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. So if you watch the tape, what you will see is completely orchestrated this game. What's going on, Bryce?
What's up, Sam? Got our first high school football game on Friday. So we are in full swing with high school football this week. We got college football. We got NFL starting. So it's exciting times for football fans out there.
It is exciting times for football fans. I will say that just by and large, college football is probably the thing I've fallen off on the most since moving to Australia, because it's just hard to keep up with. The games are earlier in the day and there's no college football ecosystem here. Like it's just harder to find the games. Like it's the thing that I feel most disappointed that I don't have the time to continue to watch as much as I used to.
Who's the favorite NFL team in Australia? Like, is it the Cowboys just because the international?
That's a good question. The 49ers, I would say, are up there because there are a lot of people that like will go from Australia to the West Coast and then like come back and they'll like pick up a team while they're over there. I see some Rams gear, but like not a crazy amount. The Cowboys are definitely a thing here for sure. I don't see a ton of Steelers stuff necessarily. I think I would say the 49ers, to be honest with you.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. But you know, to talk about things that are near and dear to Bryce's heart, to open the show, you know, fence post safety here, you know, Bryce, I'm sure, has built his fair share of fences and fence posts.
I have
in his time. So, you know, later today, I have to go out. It's been very windy here in Melbourne over the course of the last week. And our fence in our front yard is getting questionable with the front fence post. Let's go with. It's getting a little bit questionable. So it's probably going to have to be completely, you know, uprooted and repaired at some point. But until then, I'm thinking of just getting some reinforcements and, you know, just the little things you put on the side, put them in the ground, you know, reinforce the post. So that'll be my project today. I'm excited to jump in and reinforce a fence post.
I would like some video proof of this process.
Here, I'll send you what the post looks like right now.
Yes.
It's not pretty, Bryce. I will say that. It's a bit ugly, and you're going to be like, how did you let it get this bad? Is my guess here. So while we're here, Bryce is going to take a look at this and is going to be like, oh, this looks catastrophic, is my guess.
We're used to the winds. That is something that Western Kansas gets plenty of. Okay,
I'm sure that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good sign. Yeah, got to go
replace. Please replace.
It's a full replace at some point, like 100%. For now, I feel like it's so that I don't have an anxiety attack in the middle of the night. Let's at least get a reinforcement in there for the next couple of days, or like maybe a week, and then, you know, that thing can be a replace.
Yes. Yep. I support this decision.
Yes. Okay. So Bryce and I, we did the Exceeds Expectations podcast where we explain what we think like reasonable expectations are for the teams that, you know, are across the NBA, all 30 teams in the NBA. And then we're going to talk about how teams can exceed those expectations more than anything. And also what some of the questions are, I guess, around those expectations. I feel like that's kind of how the first part of this went. For the most part, we tried to keep it to, okay, what are the ways that teams will exceed those expectations? Yeah. But also we probably went like a little bit to the side, maybe, on just the questions we have about certain teams, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about this. Last time we had a lovely stopwatch. Shout out to the Google stopwatch. We have 5 minutes to talk about each of these teams. That is our rule here. We have 5 minutes, a 5-minute clock.
We did a good job. First one.
We did a great job, I think.
Because we talked other stuff for like 40 minutes before we got into it. So we did really well.
Yeah, seriously, an hour 15. That's the goal for this segment here. An hour 15. And hopefully we'll do trivia after. This will be like an hour and a half podcast.
I got trivia.
I'm ready for trivia. Are you ready to dive into the Dallas Mavericks, though?
Let's talk about them. Interesting team here.
The Dallas Mavericks are one of the teams that I think I was most interested to talk about within this construct because they came from the 4-5 game in the playoffs last year to win the Western Conference and be in the NBA Finals. They then go out and they get Klay Thompson. They still have Derek Lively who could take a leap. But are the NBA Finals and like a title a reasonable expectation? I am sure and I am certain that is what the Dallas Mavericks expectation is for this year, is like, we're going to go in and we're going to compete for a title and hopefully win the title. But do we think that is like a fair assessment of what they could do this year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think winning the title has to be the expectation, but I would say at least the Western Conference Finals is, I think that's like the bare minimum for you not to look at this being a step back. And essentially what my expectation is don't take a step back if you're the Dallas Mavericks. Continue to supplant yourself as a real title contender year in and year out with this Luka and Kyrie duo. And so that's where I would be. And yeah, I'm interested to see what you think has to happen, because like Luka's going to do Luka, Kyrie's going to do Kyrie. So is it young guy like a Derek Lively taking a step forward, or is it the additions that they made, the potential upgrades that you think would help them reach these expectations or potentially exceed them?
Yeah. So the first one we have to talk about is Klay. Like Klay has to be comfortable by mid-season, I would say, in that scheme, because the schemes are very different. Like he's going from a Warrior scheme that was very set based and movement based and motion based to a Dallas scheme where like it's a lot of spot shots for the most part. Like they'll run some backside stuff for him, I'm sure, but a lot of it is, okay, we're running ISO for Luka, ISO for Kyrie, ball screen for Luka, ball screen for Kyrie, and kind of getting in. And then Klay is going to be spotting in the corner on the wing, which will be good. I think it will be a real value add on offense for those guys, having one of the best floor spacers in league history and one of the best shooters in league history around Luka and Kyrie. But like, is he going to be 100% comfortable just like shooting spot threes? I would guess so, because they're spot threes, right? He should be able to make those shots. But I'll be intrigued to see how he adjusts to just the entirely different offensive structure from what he's used to in Golden State. It's completely different.
There is something rhythmic to be said about the flow of the Warriors offense and how he got his shots compared to just standing in the weak side corner and just standing there for the whole possession, waiting for Luka or Kyrie to potentially throw the skip pass there, or, the big out of the short roll. There is something. I'm not saying one of the best shooters that's ever lived can adjust quickly to that. I'm just saying there is something different to that.
I think he will adjust quickly, to be honest with you. It's just going to take, it might take a minute. It might take the preseason. Like, who knows? Like, it really might be quick. The second piece of it is like, okay, Derek Lively, you and I think could be like a very real dude at the center position.
Yeah.
they don't need him to take an enormous leap because they have Daniel Gafford. They have some depth there. But man, it'd be big if he takes an enormous leap like that. To me, that's how they win the title. The Klay Thompson edition goes off without a hitch. Derek Lively takes a leap from really awesome rookie who should have been first team all rookie to legitimate NBA starting big who's like a average starting center in the NBA, right? He wasn't quite that last year. I think he can be that this year if it goes right. And then like finally, it's just like the Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall, duo on the wing, which is going to be really important for them. Losing Derek Jones Jr. Can those guys really give them the kind of, in Najee's case, like increased slashing and defensive ability, in Grimes's case, like potential 3-and-D ability that I think they're hoping for?
Yeah. To me, it's our Klay, Marshall, and Grimes, like legit upgrades, significant upgrades over THJ, Josh Green, and Derek Jones Jr. And those guys all played real minutes for this team last year, especially in the regular season and varying degrees of importance in the playoffs. But those guys have to. I think PJ Washington is also going to be a guy I watch a lot because when he's playing his best, especially offensively, they're really tough to guard. When he's knocking down corner threes, then, when we saw it in the series, I believe is OKC, right? Where he shot really well. Like that's a real interesting X factor for them when he's really making shots.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, like PJ shot out of this world last year, like was unconscious last year in the playoffs. If that continues, they're a different team. If it doesn't,
he shot out of the world in the OKC series. So 47% in that series. And then in the Western Conference Finals and the NBA Finals, he went below 30. So like who knows? Like that. I think I'm not expecting him to shoot 47% from three, obviously, but can he shoot the ball well?
Okay. Next up, the Denver Nuggets. The big question for the Nuggets is they lose KCP on a team that already we had real depth questions about. So Christian Brown is going into the starting lineup. Julian Strawther might have to play like real minutes. Can they kind of overcome? Okay, our big addition is Dario Saric and Russell Westbrook, two guys that Russ could play in the playoffs last year, like sneakily. Like he was okay, I thought, in the Clippers series against Dallas. I mean, not like at a super high level, but he can give Denver minutes, I think, for sure. Saric, like I didn't think by the end of the year could really give high level minutes. Deron Holmes is going to miss this year with the torn Achilles. Do they have enough depth to contend for the NBA title? If they are going to win the NBA title, which is their goal, they have the guy that I would consider the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. I'll hear arguments for guys like Giannis, Embiid to an extent, etc. But to me, it's still Jokic. Can they actually get the amount that they need from the depth pieces to win the title? And this is the question I'll ask you, Bryce. What does that look like from the depth players like Christian Brown, like Julian Strawther, Russ, Saric, etc.?
Yeah, so that's what same expectation. And my first bullet point here where the young guys are ready. That's how they get there. Is it's not that Jokic has another gear they need a good year from Jamal Murray. I know there's been a lot of talk about that, coming out of the playoffs and then the Olympics, Porter Jr., Gordon. It's the guys you mentioned. So to me, that looks like Christian Brown stepping into the starting lineup and shooting the three ball with some volume and being very good defensively. I think that's where he has to be really good, taking, the defensive matchups on the perimeter. So Porter Jr. doesn't have to do those things. You don't have to give Aaron Gordon awkward matchups. He's able to protect, especially Murray and Michael Porter Jr. And then Strawther is really able to space the floor. I think one sneaky thing that is scary with this team is floor spacing. When you talk about the number of guys who are either not great shooters or haven't shown it on volume yet. So Strawther being able to do that. And then another one that we haven't mentioned yet is Peyton Watson. So to me, it's really these young guys being able to step into those roles and provide the value. And then the second part was, I don't know what it looks like, but Russ coming in worked, like that being a success, like the Russ idea here being successful, whether that's somehow playing off of Jokic and it making sense, or him just driving the second unit, even just if it's the regular season, and energy off the bench for this team.
So I know that you said that you're not totally sure what that looks like in terms of success, right? But like, that is an important thing to try and figure out. What does Russ success look like?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Russ has always been, even like with the Clippers on some level, when he was on the court, it still was like a lot about Russ. Like he had a 25 usage rate last season with the Clippers. That is a very, very high number for what that Nuggets scheme tends to operate within, right? Like, you look at the guys who had like a 25 usage rate on the Nuggets last year. It was Jokic and it was Murray, and that was it. I'm a little bit hesitant to assume that Russ is going to be able to come in and eat that kind of usage. How does that, like, you kind of need Russ to play with Jokic on some level just to get the spacing right from like having the floor spacing big out there. It's a weird addition to me. It's not a bad one, because like, I am curious to see how it goes. I think it has the potential to go well using Russ as a cutter, using Russ as like an energy defender on some level. I also think it has a chance to go quite poorly. And I think that Denver would need to like be willing to like cut ties quickly if it goes poorly. But like, there is a chance that this goes well. What does it going well? I guess, like, I kind of explained what I think, but like for you, I know you said you don't know, but what does it explain?
I think it going well is Russ being that energy guy in the regular season when this team needs it. And we know he's always going to bring that. So he helps, like between him and Peyton Watson and the way Christian Brown play, you know, like they drive energy into this team and help them win a few extra games they might not otherwise, just because a random game in February. And, you know, again, I use the term, the dog days of the season, they have more energy simply than their opponent. I think for it to work in the playoffs, he has to be able to play off of Jokic. Like, I think we have to see Russ as a cutter, or maybe in some interesting ball screens where he's the screener with Jokic and then short rolls and makes a play out of that or something. Like, I don't know. Like, can you find a way for him and Jokic to play together?
I know that we're going way over on Denver now, but like in the playoffs, this is going to sound weird. I almost see Russ more as like a Gordon backup.
Yeah,
than
sure.
anything else. Like, I feel like the way that Russ will have to play in the playoffs for it to be successful is like, okay, I'm playing the same way Aaron Gordon does, like crash bang, defense, cutting, etc., but with like more ball skill, obviously. Does that like make Denver a better team? No, but like if he's a backup, it might. And it might like help eat minutes if Peyton Watson isn't ready or if Christian Brown's not ready. Like, I think there's a world where this works. I don't want to crush it. I do think there are just a lot of questions because Russ is such a force of personality, and like his game is such that when he's on the court, he's driving things in such a real way that there are potholes that they're going to have to get through, and it will play a big part in them potentially exceeding expectations.
Yeah, I agree. No, that was like, yeah, him kind of playing the Aaron Gordon-y role on offense, I think is an interesting way of it working.
Okay. The Golden State Warriors are up now. Look, you and I have talked about this on the show a ton, but for me, the big way that this works is if they're like all depth strategy that they have just leads to them being like a really good regular season team that wins like 50 games, because Steph plays 70 games and they have all this spacing with like Buddy Hield replacing Klay Thompson and Pajemski coming up and like being incredible this year.
Anthony
and
Melton.
D'Anthony Melton providing like real defensive value on the perimeter, finding a way to make all of those kind of aspects work. I sent you what I think like their expectation probably is. And this is like expectation organizationally. I would bet you it's still to get to like the conference finals and like win titles.
I said true playoff factor. So I think that's kind of what I meant with that. And so I think that's what they expect. And to get there, Steph has to do Steph things. We talked about on the last episode when we talked about his extension that, you know, he is getting older. When is the fall off going to happen? Is it going to happen? How quickly? All of that. I think Draymond has to return to form. And then I think one of two things happens. Either Kuminga really takes another step forward, or you make a consolidation trade or whoever becomes available. But I think it's in the aspect of what you said, where you win a lot of regular season games up to the deadline with your depth, and then you feel like you have the guys to go for it. And then at the deadline, you make that consolidation trade because Kuminga hasn't taken another step forward, or Podziemski isn't that, whoever, you don't have that real second. That's what they don't have, is who's the second offensive guy that can really score the basketball for this team. And that guy's not on the roster. Probably
needs to be Kuminga.
It does. Yeah.
But does Kuminga work with Draymond is always the question for them.
Yes. And so that's the thing. It's either Kuminga or you win with depth in the regular season, but that's not going to win you the playoff success you want. So then you make the consolidation trade to go get that second scorer, whoever it is, right? Like, I don't know who shakes loose at that point, but that's how it ends up working to me.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's just when you have Steph, and Steph is still, as we saw in the Olympics, right? Who he is, where he's this incredible basketball player who is capable of getting nuclear hot. And, even last year, Steph had an okay year by his standards, right? Like, he wasn't blowing the doors off the place. He averaged 26, 4.5, and 5, shooting 45, 41, 92. Like that's just who we're dealing with Stephen Curry at this point. He's an unbelievable all-time, top 15 basketball player. Look, I'm saying that conservatively. Like, if you want to have Steph in the top 10, like whatever, it's fine. But that's the kind of player that he is. And when you have that kind of guy on your team still, and he is averaging 26, 5, and 5, even at 36 years old, you kind of have to go for it, I think. And that's what makes where they are positioned so difficult in a lot of ways. Let's talk real quick about Podziemski, Kuminga, and Moody, because that's probably where the internal growth comes from, right? We know who Buddy Hield is. We know who D'Anthony Melton is. We know who Kyle Anderson is, right? What are reasonable expectations for Kuminga, Moody, and Podziemski?
So I think with Pods, I would like to see some offensive growth in terms of, can he do a little bit more with the ball in his hand? Like, do we see that? Can he take on some of that load? I just want Moody to get a chance, Sam. Like, I think he's good. I would love to see that. And then I obviously have high expectations for Kuminga. I expect Kuminga to be the team's second leading scorer. So that would be, I don't know if that's reasonable or fair or not. May end up being completely wrong, but I expect him to be the second leading scorer on this team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, like, does Wiggins try and take up more of that load, or do they go with like, Kuminga just getting a lot of it? Also, does Pods just start for Klay Thompson, right? If Pods is their starter and is playing, 30 minutes a game, I think that like reasonable expectations are probably like 14, 5, and 5, right? Like something like that. Like, my questions with Pods are always like, is he going to be able to defend on the ball and like be useful in that capacity? Offensively, he's going to be like productive. I think we've seen enough now to know that at 21 years old, if he's averaging like 14, 5, and 5 and being like relatively efficient, shooting, 45, 40 and, 80 or whatever he can shoot. I know he shot terrible from the foul line, but like, I don't think any of us expect that to continue. Yeah, like if he goes 14-5-5 and Kuminga goes for 20 points a game, that's a big. Those are sizable steps forward that would be really good for Golden State, I think, and would, I think make everybody happy there.
Yes.
Next is the Houston Rockets. To me, the Rockets are pretty simply, what leap do the kids take? That's how the expectations, which to me, the expectations are playoffs. Like they make the top 8 this year. So like if it's the play-in and they fight their way in through the play-in, or, they just make the playoffs, whatever, right? Like I think you and I think it's somewhat unlikely they just like straight make the playoffs, but that I think is what their reasonable expectation is under Ime Udoka. Steven Adams coming in as the backup center, all of the internal growth potential, Tari Eason, hopefully playing a full season. Can they actually do that? And I'll just ask you, like, what kids are you most excited to see this year?
Oh, no,
in Houston.
I'm not answering that question. You get cooked every time you do it. I was laughing.
This isn't a what is best. Like,
I know.
Which ones are you most excited to watch, though?
Yeah, no, I'll answer it. I was laughing if you're watching on YouTube as you went through that, because I put playoff team, young guys continue to grow, and it doesn't come from an outlier year from the veterans. Like I don't want. Yeah. I'm not saying I don't want, but if the Rockets make the playoffs because Dylan Brooks has some outlandish season and Fred goes, like that's not necessarily how I want it to happen. I want it to happen because we see a Min become the player we've talked about, or Cam or JSJ or Jalen Green finds the efficiency or whatever. Like that's what I would want it, to see it from. I think because they're guys I was super high on, Jabari, Cam, and probably a Min are the 3 that I would just say I'm most interested to see how they progress this year. And it's again, because those were guys coming into the drafts I was a big fan of. And so there's just a vested interest of, was I right? Was I wrong? All of those things. I mean, obviously there's plenty of other guys that are interesting. Reed will be fascinating, all of that, but it's those 3 specifically for me.
So this was a top 10 defense last year, right? I felt like the reason they were a top 10 defense was by and large the addition of Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks. The addition of those 2 made life so much easier on their bigs to be able to defend and be able to play at a high level. Alperen Şengün, for instance, was drastically helped on defense by having those 2 guys. Fred played 73 games last year. Dylan Brooks played 72. I think that what Houston needs is hopefully so that Fred doesn't have to play 2,600 minutes this season and Dylan doesn't have to play 2,300, right? If they can, get 1,000 minutes back from those 2 in some way, where Dylan's playing 1,800 and Fred's around like 2,000 or
Fred played 37 minutes a night, Sam.
Yeah, he played a crazy amount. By far their most important player last year. I do not care what Rockets fans say. I am telling you, Fred VanVleet was their most important player last year. The amount of communication he gave them on defense, the structure he gave them at the point of attack defensively, the decision-making and ball handling ability. He averaged 8 assists versus only 1.7 turnovers. He also shot 39% from 3 and gave them like real floor spacing. The ability to like structure their offense. Fred was by far their most important player last year.
6th in the NBA in minutes per game. 6th in the NBA in minutes per game.
Alperen Şengün is also a great budding young player in the league. He averaged 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists. I would like to see Alperen take a bit of a leap in terms of efficiency on the interior as a scorer and on the defensive end. With that structure around him, he's going to have a men chasing guys over screens. He's going to have, Reed Shepherd, I think will give a lot of effort, at least like fighting around screens. Whether or not he's capable of it at his size, we'll see. He has like a great defensive infrastructure now. Tari Eason, another great defender that they're going to have around him, right? I would like to see him continue to take another step forward. He took one last year. I think taking another step forward defensively will be very big for Alperen.
Yep.
Steven Adams coming in and being like a real backup center. Honestly, like I'm interested to see like, can Steven beat out Jock Landale? Like I think Jock Landale is an NBA player, like truthfully. And Steven is coming off of a lost season where he was very injured and was unable to play. If Steven Adams can really play and be the Steven Adams of old, yeah, like they have a real shot at being a playoff team. If he's not that, I do worry a little bit about the defense on the interior unless Alperin takes another leap. Or unless like Amen Thompson is just like going to swat shots from like the weak side like constantly, and Tari's going to swat shots from the weak side constantly. Like they have so many this team is so talented. They really are.
Defense could be pretty good, Sam. To where
it should be very good. They have 3 guys in Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, and Amen Thompson who are legitimately awesome defenders, and that's before we get to Tari Eason, who's like strong and switchable and physical. Like they have some real dudes. And Jayshawn Tate's a good defender. Jayshawn Tate played 1,000 minutes last season. I don't know where his minutes are coming from this year, frankly. Yep. So it's a fascinating group, and we haven't even really talked about Jabari Smith. And like if Jabari Smith takes another step forward, where he averages, like seriously, a reasonable step forward for Jabari Smith is him being a 21-year-old that averages 17 points and 9 rebounds. He averaged 14 points and 8 rebounds last season. If he's at like 17 and 9 as a 21-year-old, we should be talking about him as one of the like truly great young, forwards in the league, right? That'd be amazing if he's that young, averaging those kind of numbers.
Yep.
So that's how they exceed expectation. It's just all the internal growth from the kids to me. And it doesn't have to be numbers necessarily. In Jabari's case, I think it probably will be numbers, but Alperin, it's defense. Cam Whitmore, it's like defensive rotations and constantly like being in position. Amen Thompson, it's shooting. Like that's obvious. Tari Eason's just like getting on the floor, right? Like Tari's always going to be productive when he's on the court. But like continuing to knock down shots from the perimeter, which he's done so far, but showing that he can be a threat to knock down those shots consistently. Fascinating team. Like truly one of the teams I'm most looking forward to watching. And honestly, the team I will probably watch like all of their first 10 games. I can almost guarantee you that because I just want to see how all these kids look.
Yeah, no, they'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Okay. Next up, the LA Clippers. We talked about them a little bit on the last episode because of the Ivica Zubac extension. My question for them, I think like a reasonable expectation for them is the playoffs because you have Kawhi, who's a top 10 player in the league, and you have James Harden. But I think it's just playoffs. And it does feel like a bit of a gap year while they open this arena and try to figure out their next moves, right? That feels right to you?
I said second round of playoffs.
Okay.
I think that's a little hasty, a little much, but I wonder if that's what they would want. Like for them, I wonder if like success is, hey, if we got there, we'd feel really good about losing Paul George and still getting to the second round of the playoffs with this new arena and all of that. So winning a series. But I said the only way they get there, and like you mentioned, we talked about this, a little bit with the Zubac stuff. You have to get healthy vintage seasons from Harden and Kawhi. Like those guys have to be kind of at their peak. And we're talking years, 33 and 35-year-old seasons for Kawhi and James Harden. And you just get really good seasons from their role players that do just enough. Norman Powell, Zubac, Terrence Mann. They did some interesting stuff with Derrick Jones Jr., Dunn, Batum. Maybe you get one of these young guys to give you real minutes, whether it's Kobe Brown or Bones Highland or somebody like that. That's how they have, they win games in the regular season and then pull an upset or something like that in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, like the way that this is successful is that Kawhi and James Harden both play 70 games.
Yep.
70-ish, let's call it, plus or minus 4. And they have a top 5 defense. Like that's basically how they're going to have to make this work. And their defense last year was like not incredible. Like they were right around league average. But they went out, they get Chris Dunn, they get Derrick Jones Jr. You still have Terrence Mann on the roster. Like to me, that's probably how this has to go. Like it's Kawhi, Ivica Zubac, Derek Jones Jr., Terrence Mann, like kind of carrying the defense a little bit, while also Kawhi and James Harden kind of dominate on offense and make things happen.
Yep.
So if that can happen, then there's a world where this team wins like nearly 50 games. I think, like we talked about last episode, the variability is just very high for this team because if Kawhi and Harden like miss substantial amounts of time, like they are in some trouble on offense. They are in real trouble on offense.
Do you think they have enough scoring power? Like, so you talked about the defense and those guys between, let's just say Kawhi and Harden are healthy enough. With Powell, do they even have enough scoring punch even if those two are healthy? Like,
I think yes.
Okay.
Because I think that Harden can create for others. Powell should be able to average like his typical like 15 to 17 and probably be okay.
I'm looking at the roster and I'm like, okay, how many of these guys really drive offense? Zubac doesn't, Mann doesn't, Derek Jones Jr. doesn't, Dunn doesn't, Batum doesn't. It's like, does Bones Highland become important somehow because you just need a guy that can come in and get some buckets?
Man, I hope not. But
our guy Jordan Miller.
Jordan Miller, look, he's not another guy that's going to be like driving offense, but his ability to get out and transition and like crash the glass, I mean, that's critical for them. Look, like we talked a lot about the Clippers on the last episode. Yeah. I don't know that we need to like dive super deep into them moving forward again, but to me, it's, how do they exceed expectations? It's top 5 defense and get 70 games from Kawhi and James Harden and those guys, like carry them to a league average offense, right?
Yep. Agreed.
Okay. Next. We've got the LA Lakers. I think that they're trying to win a title again. And look, like people might think that that's ridiculous on some level, but you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They're both still unbelievable, as we saw at the Olympics. You have Austin Reeves, who both of us think is like a top 50 player in the league, top, whatever player in the league. They just need two-way players. Like they need to go out and find two-way players. Success is winning a title for them or going to the NBA finals. But how they do it and how they exceed the expectations is they have to find two-way players around that trio of players.
So I said AD and LeBron health. And can you get it in back-to-back seasons? Because last year you got 147 games from those two guys in the regular season with both of them playing over 35 minutes a game. So you got health from those guys. And for what it's worth, you got 76 from D'Lo and 82 from Austin Reeves as well. So I went a little bit different. I said JJ Redick offensive creativity.
Good answer. Yeah.
Because I think AD is really good defensively. I think they can be decent defensively with what they have. Can JJ come in with the roster they have and just give this team something new? I always felt like it was so stagnant watching them. Like it was like, we have LeBron, we have AD. They're just going to figure it out because they're really, really good. And like, it's just not that anymore. So can JJ bring some sort of influx of creativity and energy on the offensive end that helps drive their offense to be better this season?
I don't mind that take at all. I think that all of this stuff matters for them, especially if we assume that LeBron and AD don't play 147 games total next year.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a difficult projection. Just to be honest, both coming off of Olympic years where they didn't really get an off season. Like Austin Reeves is probably going to play 75 games again, at least, right? That offensive creativity is going to be really critical. They're going to have to find ways to be able to make it work. I mean, scheme wise, it's going to be essential, but okay, let's say that they find a way to make that happen. I mean, they still just don't have a lot of guys, in my opinion, unless Gabe Vincent is back to like Miami Heat Gabe Vincent,
Here's another
play
thing
on both ends of the court, really, right? Like Rui is like an offensive guy who has had moments where he's like an okay defender, but he's not a great defender. Jared Vanderbilt's like all defense, no offense, really. They need more. They need to go out and swing a trade. That's what it comes down to for me. Like I know that we've been trying to talk about like current rosters with these, like, how do they exceed expectations? To me, how the Lakers exceed expectations this year is they go out and they swing a trade for like a real two-way wing that really like changes their fortunes.
Because here's the thing, like offensively, you got a 42% from three on 7 attempt season from D'Lo average. I mean, for all the D'Lo talk, he was 46, 42, 83, averaging 18 points a game and 6.3 assists. And you got a 42% 3-point shooting season from Rui this last year. After
Bryce.
Yeah.
We can all talk about how good D'Angelo Russell was in the regular season, particularly how good he was in the second half of the regular season. Do we need to go through what D'Angelo Russell's numbers were in the playoffs?
No. But this is my point is
so here's the thing with Russell though, like too. And I just want to like say this because it frustrates me. People are like, oh, like he just played really bad in the playoffs last year. Like that's, you know, he can bounce back. Like he was better in the regular season. D'Angelo Russell has played 32 playoff games in his career. Last year in those 5 playoff games, he averaged 14.2 points, 4.2 assists, shot 38.4% from the field, 31.8% from three, and then like didn't ever get to the foul line, right? And 2.8 rebounds. Do you know what his career playoff numbers are?
Yeah, I mean, only because I'm looking at them.
Exactly the same amount of points, 0.4% better from the field, 0.9% better from three, and he averages 0.6. So it's not like D'Angelo Russell has ever performed in the playoffs. I think that we can't count on that at this point. We've seen it 4 times and it has never gone well. It has never gone well.
So, I mean, to that point, that's why this roster is scary to not be what expectations are, because we've talked about all of what went right for them in the regular season last year when they won 47 games. Is that all going to happen again? And then you still have a roster that doesn't necessarily make sense in the playoff or isn't well-rounded in the playoffs. Yeah. So I'm sure we'll do like some predictions and stuff and hot takes and all of that when we get closer. Like this is a team that I think could have varying degrees of those things, because I have some concerns about the roster. I know a lot of people who's like, oh, the coach, getting rid of the coach is going to fix it all. And like, sure.
It should help.
It should help.
I think it would. I think it will really help.
I got frustrated when people tried to tell me that was the only thing that needed to be fixed and that this roster was perfectly fine. I do not agree with that.
I don't agree with that either. They need two-way players. They don't have them right now. Outside of like Anthony Davis, frankly, like, you know, LeBron can bring it when he needs to, but doesn't always. Austin Reeves is like a good team defender, but like not incredible on the ball, can get pushed around a bit. They need real dudes. Like they need actual like defensive minded players who can shoot and who can play on offense. Okay. Next, the Memphis Grizzlies. So this is just a weird one to come up with in terms of expectation. I said like conference finals, like second round to conference finals and win 50 games.
I said true,
because we've seen them do that. Yeah. Like we've seen them, you know, have to be, you know, win multiple. I think they have to win a playoff series at least after coming back to being like a 50-win team, which we've seen multiple times now. We saw it in an NBA that was like slightly less deep, in a Western Conference especially, that was slightly less deep than what it is now. But in terms of how they exceed expectations, is just like, okay, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, all back, right? Can we do that? And can we see some of the offensive growth that Jaren Jackson at times showed last season? Shout out Jaren Jackson being a top 15 player in isolation points per possession last year. per last week's trivia question.
You're welcome.
Can Ja Morant continue to grow and be like a primary offensive driver who in the playoffs can like really knock down shots? Can Marcus Smart be like the perfect glue guy for everyone on this team, allow them all sorts of crazy lineup flexibility? I loved that deal for them. Like I thought it made an immense amount of sense for them when they made that deal. I still think it probably does make an immense amount of sense for them as long as they're healthy. And then can Desmond Bane continue to be like the number 2 guy? They exceed expectations just by being healthy. And I think hopefully finding enough at the big position to make that thrive with Zach Edey.
So I said Ja being Ja. I think that's where it all starts. I also actually put the Jaren Jackson Jr. offensive uptick and him being able to, not to the same extent, obviously, but be able to provide that when necessary. And then my final thing was who rounds out the rotation. So you talked about all these guys, right? Like the key pieces, but who gives them the rest of those minutes? Who is it between Brandon Clark and Sante Adama and Zach Edey, Jake LaRavia, Vince Williams, Gigi whenever he gets back and healthy? I think that's, if they go win playoff games, it's because a couple of those guys that I just named really solidify the rotation. And it definitely has to be one of the big guys, right? Like Edey has to be ready as a rookie, or if he's not, then you get a crazy year from Clark and or Aldama to make up for it, or whatever. So I think that's a big factor here as well, is rounding out the rotation after those top 5 or 6 guys. Who is 7, 8, 9, not just in the regular season, but the guys you can trust in the playoffs as well.
If Edey is awesome in the regular season, which I think there is a chance he might be like quite good in the regular season early on, it changes things for them, to me. Like they do win 50 games if they stay healthy and Edey is really good from the jump.
Yep.
Like they will be quite good. Edey might be like league wide. There are not many bigger X factors right now than Zach Edey. If he is like really, really good, like we saw in that one game that he played against Walker Kessler, where like he made Walker Kessler just look incredibly small. If he's really good from the jump in the regular season, it changes things for Memphis pretty drastically.
Yep.
So,
yep.
That's really how they exceed expectations, is staying healthy and like getting great front court play. Santi Aldama, by the way, like Santi, I thought played quite well at the Olympics, and I thought he had a really underrated season last season too. So, I'm not saying Santi is like your answer at the 5, but is your kind of 4 or 5 hybrid when you're also getting back Brandon Clark. They have enough bodies in the front court to make it work between those guys and Jackson.
Yeah, plenty of bodies.
They need like Edey with the size to bring something a little bit different.
Yep.
Okay. We talked about Gigi Jackson being out for a little bit, it seems like, on the last episode. So if you want a little bit more on that, go to the first part of our last episode. Okay, next up, the Minnesota Timberwolves. To me, NBA title, right? If they make the finals, I'm sure everybody's happy, but they were one of the 5 best teams in the league last year, and reasonably, you're in NBA title contention if you do that again.
Yep, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I said all NBA Anthony Edwards is what gets him there. Top 5 player in the league.
First team all NBA.
Yeah. Sorry. First team. That's what I meant to clarify. And extra offensive punch. And I don't know. Does it come from one of the 2 rookies? Because that's really the big additions is all. I feel like they think Dillingham's going to be that guy, at least in the regular season. You moved up a lot to go get him. Maybe they don't think they need it right away, but those were my 2 things. Ant taking another little step forward to be a top 5 player in the league. And then they find extra offensive punch, whether it's from, Jaden McDaniels improving a little bit more on that end, one of the rookies or something like that.
So I said, for me, it's about the backcourt more than anything, which isn't dissimilar from what you're saying, but
No, sure.
Like Mike Conley is going to be 37 next year.
Yep.
And Mike Conley, might be one of those guys that can just play forever because he's, he is what he is, right? Like he's so smart and knows exactly how to play at all times. He's just so cerebral. He makes great decisions on the court. He's a good shooter. He really just might be able to play, right? But if he was to drop off a little bit next year as he continues to age, like Mike Conley last year shot 46, 44, 91 and averaged 6 assists versus 1.3 turnovers. Like if that drops off a little bit, it becomes an issue for them and they would need another backcourt body. So to me, how they exceed expectations is Conley looks the same as last year, right? Which I think is a question, but very plausible to me that he looks the same. He might just be one of those guys that don't age because from everything I know, he keeps in incredible shape of his frame. And he's really an all-time prep guy. Can they get better backcourt production from guys like Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., etc.? Or is just Ant going to take the leap into being, like you said, top 5 guy? He really might be that. The other piece of it that could happen is that Karl Towns and Rudy Gobert just continue to get more comfortable playing off of one another.
Sure.
And I thought it looked pretty good last year. Obviously it did. They won 56 games and, they had the number 1 defense in the league, but the offense at times, especially in tight moments, was not always sweet. So if they can consistently find better answers with Gobert and Towns playing off of one another, spacing, finding more avenues for Towns to be a creator in a way that he is capable of, I think that would also go a really, really long way for them toward kind of helping out and evening out their situations.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's we're entering year 3 of this, second full year of this, and third full year of this, right?
Yeah.
Or was that at the deadline?
It's really going to be the second full year.
Yeah, second full year.
Towns, missed a lot of time that first year. So, it's 2.5 almost.
Yeah. So there's a potential that there's a little bit more chemistry, maybe just with that front court in general, as Naz Reid is coming off a big year as well. So maybe you can find ways to get even a little bit more from him, as the efficiency was pretty good, 48% from the field, 41% from 3. Maybe you find him a couple more attempts a game also, and that adds a little bit.
I will say, and we're going to do this podcast at some point, I do think the Timberwolves are probably one of the teams most likely to have fewer wins next season than what they did this year, just because they won 56 last year. I think they're going to win 50 games this year, but I think it's just going to be hard to get to 56 again, because it would take Ant being, I think, a top 2 or 3 player in the world for them to get to 56 again. And that might happen. He might just be so incredibly unbelievable that it doesn't matter. But losing Kyle Anderson isn't a helpful thing for them.
Yeah.
He just lost a little bit more than what I would hope that they would have lost, right? And 56 is just an incredibly high barrier to hit. So while I am still a believer in this team, I do think that, they probably end up losing a couple more games than what they did last year. Okay. Next, the New Orleans Pelicans. To me, it was get to the second round was what is defined as success, right? If they get to the second round, that would be a successful season to me.
Agreed.
You and I have talked about how they exceed expectations, right? It's just, they have to find the answer at the center position. If they find an answer at the center position, they could easily make the conference finals. I think they could go on a run depending on what they have to give up to do it. I think you and I are not of the belief that any of the options on the roster currently, Yves Missi is a rookie, Carlo Matkovic, Daniel Tice, are very unlikely to be the long-term 2025 options.
Or quite frankly, Zion Williamson. Like, I don't love that as like your primary option at center either.
Yeah. Yves Missy, like down the road, I think you and I are believers he will be like a starting caliber center, but probably not this year. He has some work to do in defensive coverages, fouling. It's going to be, a project with him, I think. And that's not a bad thing. So to me, again, like you and I didn't really want to say like trades on this, but we went to the well with the Lakers. To me, like how they exceed expectations is find a deal that makes sense for them to go get like a real center. And what that involves, who knows? Maybe it's like a smaller deal than what we're envisioning, maybe. But if they can find a deal to go get a center that makes sense, it would go a long way for them.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair answer. It's rounding out or making sense of their current roster, which is very talented with Zion and BI and CJ. You traded for Murray, Jones, Murphy, Hawk, like all of these names, Alvarado. It's making sense of the roster. That's how they get there. I don't know that I would pick them or project or predict them to win a first round playoff series right now as the roster is constructed. But with a single trade that, I'm sure people have all sorts of thoughts on, they could put themselves in a much better position to do that, because there is a lot of talent on this roster that I quite honestly really like. But if they can round it out and kind of make it make more sense, that's how they hit their success.
The second way that this works is that the DeJounte Murray addition just goes off perfectly.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And it takes the ball out of Zion's hands at the point slightly, which allows him to like be a screener and roller and like get into the mid post. And like it creates more opportunity for mismatches for Zion if DeJounte is there, and potentially for DeJounte as well, which then could lead to more efficient play that way. What do you think a successful season looks like for DeJounte Murray in his first year in New Orleans?
I would like to see DeJounte, if he got back to kind of the defender, we talked about him being in San Antonio. That's a lot of perimeter defense between him and Herb Jones and even what Trey Murphy provides. I'm still struggling. I struggle to see what the role fit is offensively whenever you factor in how much we talk about Zion playing with the ball in his hands.
To me, it's more an Ingram Murray issue.
And then BI and even CJ.
Yeah.
I think CJ is more off the ball for sure at this point. Yeah, maybe it's just have all of those guys together. I'm interested to see, because you're not going to trade a lot of like Murray.
Stoppery kind of situations to me. Like, how does the ball flow around the perimeter is kind of my significant question.
Yeah. And then if it's not flowing around, do we see the best of Trey Murphy and some of these guys? Like, I kind of wanted Murray to go somewhere where I really believe they're going to put the ball in his hands and let him go to, kind of do his thing. And, referencing the trivia, well, I think he was top 5 in the isolation point per possession. And so obviously a guy that can be successful whenever he's doing that. So I'm interested to see how they work out that offensive flow and chemistry where the ball is moving and has energy and doesn't get stopped too much.
Yeah. Willie Green finding the right offensive flow, I think, is how this team exceeds expectations. Yeah. That's a good one. And the center position. That's really the number one thing to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is, do they win the title or not?
100%.
They should be going to try to win a title this year. And how they do that and achieve that goal is twofold to me. A, Chet, J-Dub, do those guys, Kaysen, do those guys take a leap? Right? If those 3 guys take a leap, they have a very real shot. Number 2, and I would expect all 3 of those guys to take a leap this year for what it's worth. I think all 3 are very driven. I think all 3 are very talented players who, we have not seen Jalen Williams get worse at basketball for the last 6 years of his life. I don't think that I don't think we have reason to see him stagnating. I don't think we have reason to see Chet stagnating. Same with Kaysen. The second one is how quickly do they figure out Hartenstein's addition? And what does that look like if Chet sometimes slides to the 4? What are your thoughts on Hartenstein and how it works with him making nearly $30 million? Actually, I think over 30 million this year. And also probably playing like a more limited role, because that can be a little bit funky at times.
Yeah, I would assume that is a matchup based decision. I mean, hopefully he's okay with that, but when you need to have him in the starting lineup, you play those guys together. If you want to go a little bit smaller, feel like you can, then because you don't want to not play Chet at the 5 because of the advantages him at the 5 gives you. So you don't want to completely go away from that. But I think it also helps Chet a little bit. We saw the shooting go down late in the season and in the playoffs. So a little less wear and tear on him, I think, is a very much a positive thing. Him not having to take all those matchups. This is a team that so what is that defensively? That's Hartenstein playing at the point of attack, and then you just let Chet be this off-ball roamer. I mean,
you're saying like Chet be like the ball screen defender, basically. Or no, you're saying Hartenstein be the ball screen.
That's defender. What I'm asking, right? Like that's I mean, so then you have Chet being it
depends on just like who they bring up to the, like you don't really have that choice all the time on.
Sure. Defense, right? Yeah. But then you have like Dort navigating these screens and how physical he can be, and J-Dub. Kaysen is really like, and then Caruso. I think this team
and Caruso. That you know what the sick part of this is, Bryce?
We hadn't said his name in 3 minutes.
I kind of honestly though, like I kind of like forgot for a second, like as we're 3 minutes into this conversation, like I knew going into the conversation, yeah, they have Caruso, but like as we were talking about this, I kind of forgot. And then it was like, oh shit, they have like the best defender in the league at the guard position too.
They may be the best defense in the league next year, right? You think I feel like there's a chance that they can take that.
I think it's them or Minnesota that will be the best.
They were really good this last year. So this isn't like some hot take. And then they added those two defense. I'm going to give you one that I think is going a little underrated. I think health. And I realize we're not talking about an old team, but they were just very, I don't want to say lucky, but do you want to guess what the lowest number of games played for their top 7-8 players was last year?
I have it up. So just you can read it.
Yeah. Was 71 from J-Dub, SGA 75, Chet 82, Dort 79, Giddey 80, Kaysen Wallace 82, Joe 78, Aaron Wiggins 78. Even Williams and Williams off the bench played almost 70 games each. Like they just did not deal with injuries last year. And I realize these guys are young, but you have that same type of luck where none of these guys miss any significant amount of time.
I think the odds are low. You know, we talked about that with Sacramento coming into this year, and it's why we thought Sacramento would take a bit of a step back, or coming into last year. I think that it's reasonable to expect that Oklahoma City will not be as healthy as it was this past season. You know, somebody is probably going to get hurt. Hopefully it's not one of their, hopefully it's not anybody, but hopefully it's not one of their best players. The thing is though, if Shea goes down, okay, Jalen Williams steps into the primary role. I think he's basically ready for that, if I'm being honest. If Chet goes down, okay, Isaiah Hartenstein is there. They kind of have cover for everybody that has potential to get hurt.
They have a lot of depth just in general too, right? Like this is where the Wiggins and the Isaiah Joe bringing those guys. I know they still had 1 year anyway, but having those guys in used to. And here's the other thing: if somebody does go down, especially if it's a role player, they have 3,000 picks still to go get that guy. Like obviously they swung it, and they didn't really swing, but they tried it with Gordon Hayward last year and it didn't work, but they can go get a guy, if they did lose a role player to the season, unfortunately, obviously we're not wishing this on anybody, but they have the means to go round out the roster if they needed to.
Yeah, I agree. Look, they're my favorite to win the title for a reason. And look, like nobody's saying that if Shea goes down, they're not like in some trouble. Of course they would be, but like they are more well built to suffer a star injury than anybody else in the league, I think. So that's where that comes back to. Okay, the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, again, are a team that's trying to win the NBA Finals to me. When you have this much money invested and you have Kevin Durant and you have Devin Booker and you have Bradley Beal on the same roster, I get it that they were the 6th seed last year and that we all have worries about the construction of this team. When you have those 3 guys and you're paying this much money for this roster, you're trying to win a title. So like, what does success look like? To me, it's at least conference finals.
So my expectations were conference finals like that. But to your point, you're not paying 3 guys $150 million to only go to the Western Conference Finals. And, then you're paying, a few others, significant amount of money as well. Obviously health is the easiest answer in that trio and all that. To me, I think what really gets them there is you find a 7 to 8 man rotation that works. Like, who are the guys that round that out? Does Grayson Allen have another big year? Royce O'Neal. But then after those guys, who is it? Who plays as is Plumlee actually able to give you backup center minutes? Is it Tyus Jones or Monte Morris or, obviously Jones is going to be in the rotation starting, it sounds like. So like, what is that 8-man rotation in the playoffs that works together and gives you that balance that they need around the 3 stars?
Yeah. So to me, I think that this was a team that was also like, by and large, like outside of Devin Booker early in the season, missing time, pretty healthy last year. Kevin Durant played 75. Booker still played 68. Allen played 75. Yusuf Nurkic played 76, right? So got to stay healthy. Like Bradley Beal missed 24 games, but like Brad probably is going to miss some time here and there. I think that they have a pretty good 8-man, right? Like I think it is pretty clear that they can get minutes from Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Grayson Allen, Tyus Jones as your 5 like perimeter players, KD playing the 4. And then you have Nurkic and Royce O'Neal as your 7. And then you have like Okogie, and then you have the 2 rookies that could come in, and then you have Monte Morris, and like you have enough bodies in a way that you didn't this past year. I think maybe that you have 7. Like I feel pretty confident that they have 7 this year. They're a little bit light in the front court, and they're going to have to find an answer beyond just KD and Nurkic in the front court.
Yep.
I don't love the idea of playing Royce O'Neal at the 4, but like that might have to happen occasionally. They still probably have to go find like one more body to play the 4, be it Iguodaro or Ryan Dunn, or just like going to get a big or like a front court 4-man, like a power 4-man. You know what would have made a lot of sense for them that Philadelphia did? Yabusele made a ton of sense for them. I think it's just like a bigger body who can eat minutes, right? I think it would make a lot of sense for them to look on that market, look on the international market. It's getting a little bit, quiet now, but trying to find like a great player overseas who was out of contract would have been a great answer for them, I think, just to eat minutes. But hey, like they don't have a lot of money either. So that gets difficult as well. So I think I say all of this to say now that how they exceed expectations is A, staying healthy, B, Mike Budenholzer coming in as their coach.
Yeah.
Instituting like an incredible offensive scheme that really works, like well-spaced court, high ball screens that make sense, everything that kind of comes along with his scheme. And C, finding a way to make the defense, what it was last season under Frank Vogel.
Yep.
They don't have to be like a great defensive team. They can just be like an average defensive team. And if they get more out of this offense with Budenholzer, which I think like top 5 offense is fairly reasonable for them, it should lead to like 50-ish wins again. But, in the playoffs, does this roster make as much sense as some other rosters with how small it is? I think that continues to kind of be the question for me.
Yep.
So go out and find a 4-man is kind of my continued response there. Okay. The Portland Trailblazers. This was another one. Like I had a hard time like understanding what their direction is a little bit. I think it's clear that they're trying to, just be like a solid team, right? I don't think they want to like completely bottom out. I think they want to be like pretty okay next year with Anthony Simons, with Jeremy Grant, with Denny Avdia, with DeAndre Ayton. But like, to me, I put down like 35 wins would be a success for them. I don't quite think playoffs because the West is an absolute bear. But like, if they get 35 wins and Denny looks like a great addition, and the big thing is that like Scoot takes a big step forward, I think that's probably how they define success, right?
Yeah, and they obviously don't want to win too many games. I don't think they'll be in jeopardy of that. That top 14 protected pick to the Bulls. I just said like this was one of those teams where I didn't really give a win-loss or whatever. My thing was like, who are the young guys? Like, what is the backcourt you're going to buy into moving forward? And what's the front court you're going to buy into moving forward? We've talked about the Scoot, Simons, Shaedon Sharpe backcourt. We've talked about DeAndre Ayton with Donovan Clingan, with Duop Reith, with Robert Williams. Even, you have Jeremy Grant in the mix there at the 4 with Chris Murray and Tumani Kamara and all of these guys. Like, by the end of the year, can you have a vision of what you think your backcourt is and what you think your front court is? And I think that would be a success for the Blazers if they could answer those 2 questions.
Yeah. And like, obviously you have like Clingan and Ayton at the center position now, and you have, Jeremy Grant and Denny Avdia. Like, you have a lot of weird, like overlapping pieces on this roster. Anthony Simons is still on this roster with 2 years left on his deal, right? And they haven't extended him yet. I don't love the way this roster is constructed personally, which makes it harder for me to try to figure out what their plan is, kind of, because it feels like they just have like a lot of mismatched parts that are talented but like might not work together. So how do you make that work?
Yeah.
Kind of. How do you manage that? They might be able to get 35 wins and it feels like they're like on a positive trajectory, or they might like try and bottom out. I don't know. But to get back to the Scoot point, to me, it does kind of come back to him. A successful season for them, almost more than anything, is Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe.
Yes. Yeah.
Like growing into being like real dudes. Yeah. Right.
You see a top 5 young backcourt from those 2 guys, and that makes you feel pretty good moving forward. Like if those 2 guys just look like guys. Scoot, obviously, we've talked about it, just a tough start and rookie year all around. And Shaedon was obviously injured for a large portion of last year as well. So getting those guys being good this year, I think it makes you feel really, no matter what the win-loss ends up being, I think those guys being very good makes you feel a lot better about the trajectory of the team.
Yeah, like, so success for Scoot, right? Like success for Scoot this year to me is probably like, I don't know, 18 points, 7 assists. But more than that, it's like the efficiency, right?
That's what I say. It comes down to the shooting percentages more than anything.
45% from the field, 30, hopefully 35 from 3. Yep. That might be aggressive, but his pull-up numbers were pretty good last year and he ended up shooting 32.5. So like a little bit of growth might be, plausible there. And then Shaedon, again, like it is about the efficiency. Like I know that Portland fans were like surprised we didn't put him on the 24 under 24 and 24 lists, but like he was like wildly inefficient for large swaths of his 32 games last year. In the similar way to what I felt like Scoot was. He didn't turn the ball over as much, but it was largely because like he didn't have the ball in his hands as much as Scoot did. So it's efficiency for Shaedon just as much as it is for Scoot.
Yeah. Like I think even if Scoot, 43 to 45, 35 from three, if he got his assists, his turnovers under 3, even if it was 2.9, I could feel pretty good about that growth.
Which, by the way, like he did that late last year.
Yeah.
I think that having better players around Scoot, like we saw with Ayton, like in the second half of the season, once he kind of turned it on a little bit, I think that'll make a big kind of difference for Scoot. Yep. Okay. Next, the Sacramento Kings win a playoff series. That's what it comes down to for me. Just win a playoff series, right? And how do they do that? It involves DeMar getting like very quickly comfortable and them probably having like a top 3 offense in the league, I would venture. And also like the DeMar fit just working, right? Like you just need that to end up panning out in a way that I think you and I were like a little bit hesitant about when that deal happened. Like, nobody's going to find a bigger DeMar DeRozan fan than me. I feel like I love him. I just have some real questions about, okay, you have De'Aaron Fox, you have Malik Monk, you have Keegan Murray. Like, how do you stagger these guys to make that work? And like, who is your starting 2 guard? We think probably Keon Ellis makes sense for that role just to like take defensive pressure off of everybody. But, basically like, how do you make your lineups work, and finding answers for your best lineups and your best rotations earlier on, to me, is how this works.
Yeah, this is another one where it's not a whole lot of fun when we have the same answer, but I put second round of playoffs, so a playoff win, and then top 5 offense in the league. Like that's what I don't know that I believe that this team is going to be able to put up great defensive numbers with who they have.
You know what? Like to that point though, they were top 15 in defense last year.
They were
like, they figured it out.
Yeah.
So like, if you can be slightly better on offense and be what you were on defense this year, Mike Brown works the magic. Like you can see a world where this really works.
Yeah. And they have the potential to be really, really good offensively if you figure out how all the pieces, like individual talent wise, you went through it, with Fox and then Sabonis and Monk with a really nice season, Keegan, and then you add DeRozan. So there's real potential there on the offensive end to be that level of offense. And yeah, that's a good point. Top 15 defense, if you can just stay there with a offense that jumps up, 10 spots, 8 spots, I think you could be a top 6 team in the West as good as it is. They were only 3 wins out of that last season. And then potentially you find yourself with a win in the, a playoff series win.
The only thing for me that I will say is like 100% they have the upside to do that, right? Like they really have the upside to be able to be a top 6 team in the West. They do just like kind of fall into this morass of like middle ground on some level in the West, where like, if you look at the West and what we've talked about, and the reason I want to say this here with the Kings is because the next 2 teams, by and large, aren't competing for a top 6 spot necessarily. Like I think San Antonio like has a shot to get in the play-in, but regardless, Dallas, we think like NBA finals or like at least like contending. The Nuggets, we think like contending. The Warriors, we think they're trying to contend, right?
Yep.
The Lakers, we think they're like legitimately a team trying to contend for like conference finals. The Grizzlies, we think they have a chance to win 50 games. The Timberwolves, they have a chance to win 50 games, probably will win 50 games. The Pelicans are like all in right now, it seems like. The Thunder are all in right now. The Suns are basically all in right now. So that's 9 teams before we get to Sacramento who in the West aren't just like, okay, we're trying to make the playoffs and like continue positive growth. They're competing to be like one of the 4 best teams in the league and like have, if things go right, a reasonable chance to get to be one of the 4 best teams in the league. Sacramento, like, I don't know if they have that ceiling necessarily, but like if things break right, it could go really right for Sacramento. The thing that just worries me is like a couple of these teams are going to get lost.
Yeah.
Right. I actually really hope it's not Sacramento because I love watching this team and I love watching this scheme and I love everything that kind of comes with it. But like, I do just worry that a couple of these Western Conference teams might get lost. And for Sacramento, like the way they would is if the DeMar deal doesn't go over well, but the way they exceed is if like he brings everything that they're envisioning, and that's just like what works.
Yeah. Now there's going to be a couple teams and it will be interesting to see. And like you said, Sacramento could be if all of a sudden these guys are trying to operate in the same space and they can't figure that out.
Okay. Next, the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs added a bunch of vets around Victor Wembanyama, and they have Victor Wembanyama, who realistically might be a top 10 player in the league this year if things continue to improve. I said, like, if they are success for them is like if they win 35 games, right?
Yeah.
If they win 35 to 40 games, I think everyone's probably pretty happy in San Antonio. But like if they're going to exceed expectations, it's probably they get to the play-in. How do you think they get to the play-in?
Yeah, so that's essentially what I put as well. So I think the way they get to the play-in is Wemby takes another leap, specifically offensively takes a leap. We kind of know what the defense is. I think we see a Chris Paul veteran winner helps bring and teach these young guys. And then I honestly put like Vassell.
Apollo-sance.
Yes, Apollo-sance. I put Vassell, Keldon Johnson, those guys with really good years. You know, those guys play really well. That was their second and third leading scorers last. You know, Jeremy Sohan as well there. And then, you know, maybe even something from like Steph Castle in his rookie season. So it's those guys having really good seasons, and kind of if they do this, now you're doing it on a team that's kind of winning games and competitive night in and night out. And there's something a little extra that goes along with that, as opposed to a team, you know, winning 22 games or, you know, whatever, like we've seen the last couple of seasons.
So Victor averaged 21, 10.6 and 4 last year. Shot 47, 33, 80. We said during the 24 under 24 and 24 that like a reasonable jump for him that like is not at all impossible is him going 25, 12 and 5 while being the best defensive player in the league. If he does that, they might not need like a ton of improvement. Like they were actually like really dangerous kind of near the end of the year. Like if you look at their last like 15 or so games, they were a team that like, if you were in the middle of a playoff race, you probably didn't want to play. Like they beat Phoenix, they beat the Knicks, like they beat New Orleans. They had some games where they really caused some issues for those teams that were trying to contend. I don't know. Like, I think that Chris Paul being there, I think that any growth from the Vassell, Keldon, Sohan group could really lead to them spiking. They were already like pretty frisky though near the end of the year. It's just hard to project them going from 22 to, 42 wins. But you know what? Houston did it last year. Like Houston went from 22 to 41 wins last year. In Houston, as much as we love their kids, they don't have Victor.
Yeah.
And San Antonio kind of went down the same road that Houston did last year, adding Chris Paul, adding Harrison Barnes. Like I think you and I don't think that Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul are quite as good as what, Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks were last year.
Yeah.
But pretty good duo to add that should add some veteran presence at least. So I don't know. They're good.
Real point guard play for theoretic, if they stay healthy, 48 minutes a night between Paul, and then now you just have Trey Jones coming off the bench for.
Yep.
So yeah, it'll be a fun team to watch. And I don't think I expect them to get to the play-in game, but if Wemby takes the jump, they could all of a sudden start to make things really interesting.
Okay. Last team, the Utah Jazz. Look, again, I don't totally know what their plan is. My read is that they're rebuilding and that like the Lowry deal was like, hey, Lowry just wants to be here, so let's rebuild, right? And we have this guy who's going to be like amazing for the kids because he's a great floor spacer and can be the number one option. For me, a success for the Jazz would be bottom 5 in the league, but that you have some like real franchise building blocks on the team already outside of Lowry by the end of the year. So can Keontae George step up and be like a serious dude? Can Cody Williams like be a really valuable player for them as a rookie? Maybe it's Colin Sexton. Like maybe Colin Sexton like becomes like a serious dude. Already, I would say he's like a top 75 player in the league, like something like that, right? Especially on offense. He's probably a top 50 player in the league on offense. Like he's really, really talented. Can Taylor Hendricks become like what we thought Taylor Hendricks would be when he came out of Central Florida? Those are the answers I would want if I was Utah. I would just want the kids to play really well, and it probably lead to losses.
Yeah, I said tank to pair another star with Lowry, and what young guys do you believe in? So can you walk out of this season and, hopefully you have the answer of yes, this, we know that Keontae is going to be this, or, can we figure out what Walker Kessler is? I feel like this is a confusing situation to me in terms of what they think he is or what they value him as. So can you get those answers and then hopefully get that top 5 pick, and land number 1 and get Cooper Flagg or, Bailey if it's a little later, whoever, all the names we know. But yeah, keep your pick because they actually have a protection on there. They owe one to OKC that's top 10 protected the next couple of years. Go get another guy to go with Lowry and then start to figure it out from there they could build it out fairly quick because they also have all of this draft capital from the Gobert and the Mitchell trades. So if they go get Cooper Flagg and they love him and Lowry, and then Keontae is this flamethrower off the bench and Sexton makes sense in the starting lineup, and you want to go you want to go get somebody else to pair with them, you have the assets to do that and build it out in 2 or 3 years if you really wanted to. But you got to take care of business this year first.
Keontae George averaged 13 points, 4.4 assists, shot 39, 33, 85 last year. Do you have any reasonable expectations for Keontae George this year?
I would like to see the efficiency continue to grow. I know we talked about this a lot with young guys. Yeah. I don't think my expectations for Keontae even coming in were as high as maybe some others. Like I always thought he was just going to be a really, really good third guard. But I guess if he could come in and really show that efficiency and like true on-ball playmaking, I think that'd be a huge win for them. Like I think that would be really, really something for them to be very, very excited about.
Yeah, I agree. Like if he shows efficiency and some lead ball skills and like improvement on defense, that's a big one. It would mean a lot. The final thing I will say is just like, this is going to be really hard for Will Hardy, right? If he's not able to do this, I don't know that it says anything less about him as a coach, but like they were so fucking bad on defense last year. Like they were god awful, egregiously abysmal on defense last year. finding any sort of defensive identity long term here would be so critical, in my opinion, for how they're able to continue to build. Just find like any sort of create a real identity on defense would be my like number one thing. Is you're going through this rebuild, you might not be like an amazing defensive team, but you have Walker Kessler on the interior. You have Lowry, who's turned into like an okay, like positional defender who's like not catastrophic at this point. You have Taylor Hendricks, who we think like could be a really good defender. Just try to create that infrastructure would be my main thing for them this year. Try to create that. It doesn't have to be that you're, outside of the bottom 5 in defense, but just like find a way to create that infrastructure and overall attitude and mindset on defense.
Yep. I agree.
Okay. Bryce.
It's 30 teams. It's pretty good.
30 teams. Do you know what time it is?
It's trivia time, baby.
It's trivia time. Bryce, you are up.
Okay.
You are taking the reins of the show.
We are going back to the well of play types. We were doing pick and roll man. For this one, possessions greater than equal to 2, similar to what we did with isolation. Turnover frequency greater than equal to 8%, and shooting foul frequency greater than or equal to 17%. So we're looking for bigs.
Repeat that last one.
Yep. Shooting foul frequency. So getting fouled as the roll man on the shot, 17%. So we're looking for bigs, potentially, pick and roll man, who are at least in 2 possessions a game, turn the ball over at a decent rate. So, and also then got fouled quite a bit whenever they were rolling to the rim.
Okay. Does what I wrote on the screen make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
The one quick caveat is it isn't just fouled in general. It did have to be a shooting foul, but people will get the point.
And how many?
Oh, excuse me. 4 players met this criteria that played 60 or more games.
Okay. Okay. So my first guess is, so Joel did not play 60 games. So that does not track.
So Joel inspired this.
Yeah.
And actually, even if he would have played the games, he didn't meet the criteria. He did the turnover frequency. He was number 2, actually, if you just, go by that. But didn't hit the shooting foul frequency, which I
he actually weirdly doesn't get fouled on his rolls that often.
Yeah.
He tends to like catch
flop
at the
in the
elbow
isolation stuff.
Yeah. So that actually does track for me. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
He inspired the question though. I mean, because I thought he would be like number 1 on this list. I thought he would be like the prime example, and he obviously wasn't.
This is going to be very difficult.
It is.
Is Daniel Gafford one of these guys?
So that's a great call. Daniel Gafford is not one of these guys. Let me see if Gafford is on my list of. Gafford is. So it looks like he did not actually have the turnover frequency. He's actually towards the bottom of this list, but he would have got the shooting foul frequency percentage. So that's interesting. Maybe you can go off that trend there, but didn't turn it over as much as you would think.
This is going to be an insane question, Bryce.
You're welcome.
This is the first one where I'm like, this is like fairly bonkers. Okay.
There's one name that I think you can get based on the criteria that would make sense. Yeah, there's one for sure.
So like Porzingis pops. So like it's not going to be him.
For what it's worth, NBA.com fuses the two.
Yeah.
But you're saying no, Porzingis isn't.
I was going to say there's no way Porzingis is one.
No, he doesn't meet.
It has
either.
to be like rollers.
Yeah.
Me. Like it can't just be like pop and drive.
So for what it's worth, Kristaps was 7.5 turnover frequency percentage and 8 on the shoot. Like he was less than half on the shooting foul.
Yeah. Bigs who turn the ball over a lot. Is Zubats on this list?
Zubats is one. So Zubats had a turnover frequency of 10.1, which on our list would be 4th. And then shooting foul frequency percentage 17.2.
My next guess is going to be Poeltl.
Jakob Poeltl is not on this list. Jakob Poeltl 6.3% turnover and pretty low on the shooting foul frequency. So you were tracking with Zubats. Stay in that lane. I think you should get one other one.
Okay, so
a big that doesn't pass very well.
But Nurkic passes, but he turns it over a decent amount too. So Nurkic.
Yusuf Nurkic is not on the list. I wonder if he didn't have the possession. Oh, no, he is. Where's he? No. He must not have had the possessions.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because he does screen and pop a decent amount. But yeah, now you're looking confused. Is Nurkic actually on the list?
No, he's not. I'm just trying to... No. I'm trying to find him. Okay. I changed my criteria to see where he's at on the list.
Is Wemby on this list?
Wemby is not on this list.
Did Wemby not get fouled enough?
I'm still trying to find Nurkic.
Okay. Huh. I mean, DeAndre doesn't get fouled enough.
Victor was 8.5 turnover. Yeah, he didn't get fouled enough. He did hit the turnovers.
Yeah.
Think of a very poor passing big man.
I mean, there are quite a few of them, Bryce. Okay, so
that only catches lobs where he probably gets fouled, or just gets fouled because he's not necessarily a great free throw shooter.
Okay, I'm like kind of running through teams in my head now. I like need to like kind of run through those because that'll be easiest for me. Is Jarrett Allen on this list?
Jarrett Allen is not on this list. Let's find Jarrett. Didn't have the turnover. Didn't have either. Nope. He's 6.4 turnover. He just barely missed the shooting foul frequency.
Okay.
Big man that you would not trust to pass.
A big man that I would not trust to pass. Okay.
Like, so we have 3 names left.
Yeah, that's why Gafford was my immediate
that tracked. That's why I said so 2 of these guys are starters and like pretty big names.
Is Nick Claxton on this list?
He's not on this list. I just saw his name. Nick Claxton was 7.3%. Didn't get fouled as much
either. Okay.
And then the third guy is the one I don't think you'll get is a backup big.
Oh, is Mitchell Robinson on this? No, but Mitch didn't play enough games. Yeah, so it's not Mitch.
It's not Mitch. Good. Stay with that and find the guy I'm trying to get you to go to.
Stay with that kind of player. You're saying.
To at least get one of them.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to find Nurkic on here.
That's amazing. Because we know he played 60 games. I mean, I don't think Clint Capella got fouled enough.
Nope. Capella did not. You're so on track. I bet the chat is yelling at you.
I'm sure it is.
He didn't turn. Capella was actually towards the bottom of the turnover. He almost got fouled enough.
What in the world? What Random big man.
No. This is not a random big man. This is a very known big man.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Rudy,
thank you. Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Rudy Gobert led the turnover frequency percentage.
This is actually, to me, the Rudy stat, not the Joel stat.
Yeah, sure. That's probably right. Yeah. This is the Rudy stat, because like what I got to with, you're going to foul him on a lob. You're going to foul him because you don't trust him to make free throws. 22 points. So he led. Yeah, this is definitely the Rudy stat as I got into it. He led both numbers.
Okay.
So the next guy
is Valanciunas on this list.
Valanciunas is not on this list. Valanciunas did not have either. Didn't turn it over very much. The next guy is known for his passing as a big guy. Would probably surprise you to be on this list.
So Sabonis then.
Sabonis is on this list at...
I almost said Sabonis, but I wasn't sure I didn't think he'd hit the turnover, to be honest.
Yeah, 9.2, surprising enough, which was fifth on the list.
Okay. And then we have
one left that, like, honestly, this one's going to be tough. He's a backup.
He's a backup big man,
but a good one, like one that like he plays.
A backup big man, but he plays.
I don't even know. Like, he doesn't even make sense. Like, everybody else has made sense. I feel like even Sabonis, just because he got he's getting.
Oh, he gets fouled all the time.
He gets fouled. Yeah. He's trying to make passes. Like
Drew Eubanks or something.
That's a great poll. That's not it, but Eastern Conference team.
East. Okay. Eastern Conference team. Big man who definitely plays. Andre Drummond.
Andre Drummond is not on this list.
Huh.
Trying to think of a hint.
Obi Toppin or Isaiah Jackson?
Nope.
Huh. Oh. Is it Nick Richards?
It is not. That's a very fun name, though.
That definitely feels like something Nick Richards. That feels Nick Richardsy to me.
It does feel Nick Richardsy. I'm trying to think of what can I
mean, I'm just like running through backup bigs now in the East. Onyeka Okongwu?
Nope.
Paul Reed.
No, he didn't have enough. I'm going to be interested to once I can click off.
How is this not Paul Reed? This is like also very much a Paul Reed stat, I feel like, too. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm like trying to think of backup bigs like the.
So Nick Richards didn't turn it over, but 26.9% shooting foul frequency.
I'm stunned he didn't turn it over enough too.
Yeah, didn't turn it over enough.
Goga Batadze.
Very warm.
Okay, so John Isaac.
A little colder, but still warm.
Mo Wagner.
Mo Wagner is the answer.
Okay. So that's a good Wagner number 2, actually. Yeah.
I thought
now that I think about it, it makes sense. Yeah.
I thought the fouls made sense just because kind of the way he played. I didn't know. I guess I never had thought Mo like super turnover prone, but maybe
it's more like are you always trying to drive? Because I feel like those guys that like will try to drive, because Sabonis I wouldn't say is turnover prone, but like if you're going to catch on like the short roll and then like try and drive, you're a big man, you're going to get ripped sometimes. Like, yeah. Wagner actually makes sense to me there.
I can't. So I don't think it won't let me go to the next page. So Nurkic must just not have had the possessions. Mobley was actually very high on the turnover frequency.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
he didn't hit the shooting foul frequency. So Gobert was 1, Embiid would have been 2, Mobley was 3. And then the other guys we talked about, Zubac, Sabonis, Wagner, Wemby, Mark Williams was up here.
Yeah, he just didn't play enough games.
Yeah. Ayton was up here. Zach Collins.
Yeah, Ayton doesn't get does Ayton actually
he doesn't get fouled at all.
I was going to say doesn't get fouled.
I'm only talking turnover frequency now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Jalen Duren, Claxton. Yeah.
Interesting. That was a good one. That was an intensely difficult one. And yet also one that I kind of loved because it made me think a little bit differently about some of these bigs.
The only thing I didn't like about that one is it was hard to pick up on a trend because Sabonis was so different than Rudy whenever you think about the type of player that hit the numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah,
to me, it was more just about I thought it more from the free throw percentage than anything.
Yeah.
That was because turnovers can be funky in terms of you're just it's always going to be a lower percentage, which means it can be always achieved through variance in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, that was a fun one. I liked that one.
It's driving me crazy. I can't find the Nurkic stuff right now, so I'm going to spend the rest of the night trying to figure.
So so it's here. I can pull it up on Synergy. So you're looking for on rolls specifically.
No, it was just pick and roll, man. Okay,
so he was 13.2 turnover percentage.
Oh wow.
And the free throw percentage was only 13.8.
Okay.
So
how many possessions does it say?
Per game, I can look that up. 2.3. So I was quite close on Nurkic. I actually did think Nurkic would hit the turnovers. I wasn't sure on the free throws because he often pops.
So it just must not have got put in here because he's still not showing up.
Yeah, very bizarre. Very strange.
Interesting.
Huh. Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that, Bryce. That was a fun one.
Good. I was a little nervous about that one, that it wasn't it didn't give enough of a trend to get any names. So,
to be clear, you win that one. By the end, I was guessing random Eastern Conference bigs.
Well, Wagner, I mean, if anybody got Mo, the one I thought you'd be able to get I thought you would get Gobert and then eventually Sabonis just because the usage and he gets fouled so much. So those are the two I thought you would get. And you pulled Zubac pretty early. So I had no expectation of you getting Mo.
Yeah, I had no real shot at that one. That one was that one would have taken a Sam Merrill-esque.
I was going to say that would have been a Sam Merrill pull.
Toss at the wind. Okay,
I honestly would have been pissed if you would have got it.
Yeah, no chance. No chance on Wagner. Okay, Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter with, NBL stuff starting, all of that. Be doing more NBA draft and talking on there. Maybe start doing some stuff on Substack. So we will see, but anything I put out, you can find right there. Otherwise, Game Theory Podcast right here with Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. Hit the subscribe button over on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button over on your podcasting platform, Spotify, iTunes, whatever you listen to the podcast on. Hit that subscribe button. We will be back next week on Sunday, where I will be in the Gold Coast at the NBL Blitz. So I will have seen a couple of these guys. We'll probably talk a little bit about the first couple days of the Blitz whenever we record on Sunday in the US. That's about all we've got here, though. So until next time, we'll talk soon.